Hello and welcome to Woodsmaster Will's Outdoor Skills, a new YouTube channel dedicated to passing on simple information about outdoor and woodcraft skills to the outdoor enthusiast, scout, and reenactor. My name is Will Woodsmaster Cover, and I'm going to be your host and guide on this video journey into the outdoors. Today's episode is going to deal primarily with the variety and selection of knives for both everyday carry and for your trekking kit, as well as other woods tools like the hand or camp axe and folding saw to add to your kit as well. We'll go through a small selection of my personal collection and then discuss the usage, care, and maintenance of those tools, focusing on the sharpening of knives with the whetstone in the old style, as well as sharpening the camp axe with file. I hope that you enjoy this series as much as I anticipate enjoying bringing it to you. So, what do you say? We get started and take a look at the wide variety of knives that are out there. All right, so here we have a small selection of my personal collection of everyday carry knives, camping specific knives, reenactment knives, and other woods tools. Let's start off with talking a little bit about what I would consider the most recent kind of version of the everyday carry knife. That would probably be this clip style knife right here. So it clips onto the outside of the pocket or pocket flap or belt. It has kind of an assist here for easy opening. And I personally like a smooth blade as opposed to a serrated blade for the kind of work that I do, though certainly a serrated blade has a lot of benefit as well in particular circumstances, but I find them hard to keep sharp. We may delve into the sharpening of serrated blades in another video segment. Now, I am a longtime scouter, and so I'm probably most familiar, as many of you are, with this kind of knife right here. This is a basic camp knife or scout style knife. It's a great item to have in your kit if you're going out camping. It has a good variety of blades for camping use. As you can see, here's a can opener that comes in that, as well as a leather awl in case you're having to make some repairs to leather or canvas. Here on the other side, before we get to the cutting blade, you'll find a flat tipped screwdriver or standard screwdriver, as well as a bottle opener. And then on a lot of these more modern knives, you'll find a Phillips tip screwdriver as well. And then usually they have a single cutting blade, just like that there. So this is a pretty basic camp knife for general purpose, a great thing to have in your kit. Has a good variety of tools to it, and you can't go wrong having this as part of what you carry both in the everyday or just in the camp situation. I myself, I favor a knife like this. It's a little smaller, not quite so bulky. It doesn't have a lot of tools to it. It really just has 3 blades. This is considered a Stockman's or Whittler's style knife. There are 3 blades, one larger here, a smaller sheep's foot blade, and then what they would consider the pen knife blade as well. Interesting footnote to history, the pen knife actually does come from when quill pens were the primary form of writing instrument in ink, and you had to sharpen those quills in order to keep a good writing point. We'll be coming back to this knife. This will be the one that we're sharpening today and doing a little cleanup work on. Let's see, here's a much older knife. This is a kind of fancy clasp knife that was carried by my grandfather. It's got a really nice natural bone handle to it, one large blade. It actually has a locking mechanism here that you can depress with the thumb. Keeps it from closing and won't open unless you depress that there. This is one of the knives that I carry in my shooting pouch and possibles bag while I'm reenacting. It's not quite historically accurate, but it suffices in most situations, and it's a good knife, especially if you're using it to prepare a meal or just do some simple camp chores. There are knives that are particular almost to every profession where knives are used. We'll come back to this here. This is a larger version. Swiss Army style knife, has a lot of different blades, if you will, including scissors, corkscrew. There's the tweezers and toothpick that go in there. This knife here is a sailor's or rigger's knife. Has a marlin spike for splicing rope. Basically a large eyelet for dragging rope through the various splices, and a combination blade for rope. Both 4 of the blade here is a standard straight edge, and then you have a serration there toward the back. Comes with a big lanyard loop, so if you're up working in the rigging, that can tie off to your kit. Also has a big, this one in particular has a big flat edge screwdriver for working. This is what they would call a lineman's knife here. One large blade as well as a fairly sizable screwdriver. So there's a cutting edge there, but this blade is in particular blunted off to be used as a prying and screwdriver point. Once again, also has that lanyard loop to it. A lot of folks nowadays like to carry a multi-tool. These are super handy. I don't find them particularly useful for cutting. The handle is a little bit cumbersome for me to feel comfortable with it as my primary cutting knife. I often carry that. It's got a file, which comes in handy. A lot of the same blades, if you will, as you'd find in the camp knife. This one also has this is for removing fish hooks and doing some small sawing. I really find it most useful for the plier function that it brings about. And this is the one that I keep in my craft box. I do a lot of work with brass wire, so that's that one there. If we look at the selection of fixed blade knives that I have here on the table, this is what you would call a basic standard hunting knife. This one here has a nice stainless steel blade to it. Here is a military fighting or survival knife. This is not like a Rambo knife. It doesn't have the hollow handle. This has got a good stacked leather handle, heavy pommel for doing work. This is the kind of knife that I like to have in my kit for using small log to baton. And we'll touch on that in one of my later segments, how to utilize a knife for batoning, cutting live wood, things like that. But it's got a really heavy blade. It's part knife, part shovel, just heavy duty work there. This is a very old knife. It's got a beautiful hand-carved handle to it. Very old, high carbon steel blade. In fact, it may have started its life as a file. I picked this one up in at an auction, bottom of a flat. But I use this as my patch knife while I'm reenacting, so it finds itself in a sheath on the strap of my shooting pouch, and this is what I use to cut away patch material while I'm muzzle loading. It also is just a very handy knife for quick access in a variety of other tasks. This is my big heavy knife. I built this one myself. It's got a California style Bowie blade to it, big heavy handle, brass pommel. This is my camp knife for reenactment. I do a lot of splitting of kindling, things like that with it. I suppose if need be, it would make a heck of a good fighting knife. It's got a really nice balance to it that I worked out, but it's a lot for show in that reenacting. Then later on, we're going to touch on the hand axe or camp axe, if you prefer. And then if you are a backpacker or camper, I highly recommend, as part of your kit, that you get a good solid folding saw that has locking mechanisms that'll keep it from closing on you. I like this one a lot. And a saw is very much more efficient in the cutting of any sort of timber or logs that are a diameter much more than about an inch and a half. And so that's a very important tool to have while you're camping. Before we get into sharpening with the whetstone here, and this is my primary whetstone, but I have a couple of other varieties, pocket varieties. We're going to talk a little bit about keeping your everyday carry knife maintained. Like I said, this is the one that I've carried almost every day of my life since I was 16. It was of a size that I could keep it on my person while in uniform when I was with the United States Navy, and so this is a very trusted friend. But we're going to open this up, and we're going to do a little bit of care and maintenance on it here. So you want to open up all the blades, and what happens is a lot of times a lot of pocket lint and things like that get down here in the channel of the knife. And so if you're wanting to clean that up and keep it healthy, what I like to do, I like to get in here with a toothpick. Oh, you can see right there, just brought out a really big hunk of lint from my pockets, and it's pretty gunky in there right now, so we're past time for good cleaning. It is one of those things. As an everyday carry knife, I use this to cut all manner of things. I'll end up peeling apples with it and cleaning my fingernails. I suppose not all of that is overly sanitary, and so that's why it's good every once in a while to get in and give it a really good clean out. Like I said, we do this carefully because you have to do it with the blades open. All right, so that is looking fairly clean in there, but what I want to do here, I've got a little bit of patch material. That's just a soft cotton old t-shirt cloth. I'm going to throw a little bit of alcohol on that, wet it down really good, grab a new toothpick. We'll do a little wrap around here so that we can get in and really clean out the insides here. When I bring this cloth out, you're going to see all manner of gunk and junk on there. We clean off these insides of the scales. Scales are the in this case faux bone that's on the outside of the knife. You can see I get in there really good, clean everything up. That's pretty filthy down in there. I'm going to take a dry cloth now, do the same thing with the tip of my toothpick, just like that. All right. Oh, more and more coming out there. We're going to try one more. Get in and see if we can't clean that up just a little bit more on the inside. So this is something that should be done on a regular basis. I'm a little behind in my maintenance of this knife. I had misplaced it for a period of about a month and a half. I actually thought that I'd lost it. It turned out it was on my desk underneath some mail that was long overdue to be opened. So, all right, so we've got that cleaned up really nice. Take one more time. I'm going to get in here with, I think what I'll use is maybe a cotton swab. I guess maybe I don't have one of those. What I will use here then is a little bit of pipe cleaner. This is another great way to clean up a blade. All right, but we're just going to kind of clean, sanitize that. If you had some spot rust showing, you can get a little fine steel wool in there. I'm going to bring the big blade up here. Clean that like that. A little sanitizing here on all the blades. And I always have to take special attention on this smaller blade here. It's the blade that I use the least, which is kind of interesting because it ends up being the sharpest blade on the knife because it gets the least amount of use. And so there we go. Give that a good clean there. Put him away for now. Take care of the little sheep's foot blade. Like I said, if you are a whittler or a carver, that's a really handy blade to have. I worked for years as a stage technician, so I would use this blade all the time as I went about my stage work. And there we go. So that kind of gives it a good cleaning. We'll touch that up again later after we finish with the sharpening portion of things. So what I like to do is use a good old-fashioned whetstone. Most whetstones have two sides to them, a much smoother side and a coarser side for removing a little bit more. You can see it a little bit better here, I think, on this flat stone. If you see that line delineation, right about here is where the two kind of halves of the stone come together. Our coarse side is here. Our smoother finish side is there. All right. So now you don't have to wet a whetstone, but a lot of us do like to use just a little bit of light oil on the stone for some lubrication. All right, so we've got our main blade here. I'm going to spread the oil out just a little bit on the stone. Okay. And so what we're looking for here is about a 25 to 30 degree angle and a slight circular motion on the blade. And of course, the larger the blade, the more movement that you'll have to do to make sure that you're getting all of it. I do one side and then that same circular motion on the other. I'll remove a little bit of that light oil. So this is a good old, this is a Calamus. It's an older knife, made in USA, high carbon steel blade. Takes an edge very, very quick. And so it doesn't take a whole lot for me to true up the edge on this particular knife. We do a little bit on both sides. Once again, I carefully wipe off that oil. Okay, so what I'm looking for is, it really wants to grab a hold of the ridges of my thumb. And so just to kind of demonstrate now where we are with this particular knife, here's a kind of nice weight paper. And if I come in here, and that cuts pretty smooth right across the paper. So that's not bad. I mean, I could spend some time and put a sharper edge on that, but it's certainly got a nice fine edge to it. That's good for what I'm needing it for. Now, I like to say that a sharp knife is certainly safer than a dull knife. It's easier to control, and if you know your knife is sharp, you're going to be less likely to handle it in an improper manner. So I always have to remind myself, I do some fight choreography and the like, and I'm always having to remind myself which are my blunted blades for stage combat and which are my working blades for real stuff here. So we're going to just put a nice edge here on the sheep's foot, and just like that. So it doesn't take a whole lot if you've got a good quality high carbon steel blade. Wipe that off. Yep, right there. And that's a nice sharp edge. Cuts right through. So we're looking good there. Fold that up, put that away. Now we're going to spend a little bit of time on this one. Actually, because that's the one I use the least, it's still good and sharp from last time. You can see, just digs right in there, cuts away. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to flip my stone over for a moment, and we're going to put kind of a real razor edge on there with the finer surface here, just like that. Like I said, if you spend any amount of time at all with your knives and keeping them trued up and sharp, this does not have to be a very long process as we go. So, all right. I'm going to leave, oh yeah, that's a good edge there. I'm going to leave that coat of oil on there so that everything stays nice and lubricated. Now, we talked a little bit about what do you do if you've got one of these larger fixed blade knives. Pretty easy to work with that smaller blade. I'm going to flip back over to my coarse side here, and we'll pick up this old this is a World War II style fighting knife. It's one that I picked up at an antique store. I have not done a whole lot of work with that, so this is going to be a really good blade for us to work to put an edge on here today. So once again, I throw a little light oil onto the stone, kind of smooth things out, just like that. So the principle is the same. This is a little heavier blade, so you might have a slightly steeper angle. The lesser angle, like I said, that 20 to 25 degrees, that's going to give you a really thin edge to it. And of course with these, you got to work a little bit on that curved edge. You can go that way with it. So this is a much thicker blade, and so it will end up having a bit more of a chisel style grind to it. But once again, I like these good old high carbon steel blades. Folks will say that your stainless steel, of course, will maybe keep a edge longer, but it's a lot harder to put that edge, I think, on a stainless steel knife, regardless of the carbon content. Already, I can sure feel a difference in that there. Now this would be one that I'd probably spend a little bit of time, so it's got some surface rust here and what I would consider pitting. So if I were refurbishing this blade, I would have to get in there with some steel wool, maybe even a Dremel. The biggest problem is when you do that, it kind of takes the patina away. But it's all about, you know, you want that blade for a working knife, or are you just keeping it for its collector's value? So I'm going to not worry so much out the patina on that as I continue to rehab this knife. But as you can see, you just have to move back and forth, that circular motion the entire length of the blade. Flip her over, do the same thing. Okay. Now, if that's not exactly the style that you want, or if you're not sure about the angle, you can also sharpen in this manner. All right, I just find that the flat circular motion is maybe the easier way, but certainly this is acceptable as well. Okay, but already that good old carbon steel blade, especially down here on the larger flat, that's starting to get a good edge on it again. Okay, if I had a knife that really needed some serious work, we would switch over to the diamond hone. So like with my woodworking chisels, I like to use the diamond hone on that as well. And then this is a really handy little gadget. It is a carbide sharpener. So I don't know if you can see here, there's a very small carbide tip, and it's got a concave surface here with those carbide edges. And so if I come to this knife, right, and I run, especially up here, right, where I've got that angle that I'm having to deal with, I can really feel the carbide cut in there, and it's removing, you know, a whole little tiny strip of steel as it goes up, and that's starting to put an edge back on that knife. I don't know if you can see in this particular camera how that, you see that little gleam that's coming there? Well, that's new, fresh metal that I basically scraped away in the same manner that a file would. But that really begins to put an edge on a big knife like that. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the diamond hone. We'll move away from our whetstone. We'll go to the diamond hone here. Now this particular hone block, pardon me, this particular hone block has 4 different grit levels on it. So they're color coded. You've got a 200 grit, okay, a 300 grit, a 400 grit, and a 600 grit. Right. So if I'm really looking to get that razor edge on something, I'm going to work my way up to that 600 grit. But we're going to dial her back down to the 2. All right. And we're going to go to work here on this older lineman's knife. Not much of an edge on that right now. So the same sort of principle applies. Now, I'm dragging toward me. Alright, and then I can push away from me as well. And already this particular grit is really starting to wear away at that steel. Alright, I'm starting to see that edge really pop there. It's important, of course, the biggest thing is keeping the angle as consistent as possible. Of course, the diamond hone allows the filings. Basically, that's what you're doing. You're filing off a very small strip of that steel. Come in here. Oh yeah, that's starting to sharpen up nicely. Alright, let's do a little paper test here, see what that's starting to look like. Still not too good, not like my little knife. It's still wanting to tear more than it is cut. And so we've got some work yet to do on this knife here. So the process will move ahead, and we can begin to put a finer and finer edge on that knife as we switch to the next level of diamond hone. Yep, that's starting to come along nicely. All right, so that's the use of the diamond hone there. Now, I'd continue to work on that for a while until we get a good solid edge on it. Here is my common hand axe, camp axe. I believe this one here is an old plum. So it's seen a lot of wear and tear. I like these style axes just because the curve is very ergonomic as you work, but I can tell you that this needs some help. Okay, it's probably had its fair share of time getting dumped into the dirt as I've worked, and so it is long overdue for a good sharpening. I'm going to paraphrase an Abraham Lincoln quote. I believe he said something to the effect that if he was given 2 hours to cut down a tree, that he'd spend the first hour sharpening his axe. A well-maintained and sharp tool is going to work that much harder for you as you go. All right, so with your axe, this might require some file work, and I'm gonna pause our video here. I'm gonna get my little workbench out because I like to secure the axe in a vise so that I can really get a good solid bite on that edge. So we'll be right back. Okay, and we're back. So what I've done now is I have secured our axe with blade up in this little workbench tabletop vise. I've got my file here, and I've created a little bit of a guard that will protect my fingers and hands. And what we're going to do is we're going to begin running the file the length of the blade as we work to get the edge put back on there. So I like to work two-handed here. It helps me to control the angle of the file. All right. Okay. All right, that edge is already starting to come back. Good. Continue to let the file do the lion's share of the work. And we're going to come back in here with the whetstone and put a good fine edge on that. You can see why it's important. Put that little guard on my file. Keeps me from running my knuckles into the blade as we work. Alright, well, that's coming along nicely. Alright, then a stone like this, okay, is really easy to handle. But just like before, I have to put a little oil on the stone, really soaking in. It's been a while since this stone's been used. All right, we're gonna let that kind of lubricate what we're doing here. All right, here we are. Good, keeping my fingers clear. Now, being right-handed, working with the stone, it's easier for me to simply change the position of the blade. All right, so I can get in here on the other side and continue to put that edge back on. Okay. Oh yeah, that edge is coming back nicely. Haven't abused this axe too much. It doesn't have any big nicks or anything like that that you have to get out. Oh yeah, there we go. Okay, so a little bit more work this way and we'll be ready to go. Nice fresh edge, put on our camp axe, ready to do some work. All right, very good. So I think that this will conclude the tutorial for today. If you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment, things that you'd like to see me do. That'll work as well. All right. Well, I hope that you found that to be interesting and educational. Personally, I find the sharpening of my woods tools to be a relaxing part of my hobby. I like to spend time making sure that they're in top-notch operating shape, ready to go when I'm ready to get out into the back country. I appreciate your time today. Once again, leave comments in the comments section, and we'll see you next time when we get ready to hit the trail with some basic rope skills, knots and lashings and proper whipping of the ends of rope, maybe some splicing worked in there. Who knows, maybe I'll get out the rope machine and we'll make some rope from scratch. Until next time, have a great day.